Hello, hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne, the talk show. I am so excited to introduce our very special guest today, Dr. Lucille Green. She is the author of the book, A Life That Counts, and she also has a cookbook called My Favorite Recipes, and she's here today to talk with us a little bit about her time in Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement, and we're just going to hear her beautiful story. So y'all come and join us as we talk with Dr. Lucille Green. Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne. I am so excited to introduce my guest to you today, Dr. Lucille Green. She is such an inspiration, and she is an author of a book called A Life That Counts. Y'all help me welcome Miss Lucille. Welcome, Miss Lucille.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Joanne. It is so wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come and share with us today. I was excited and just looking for women who have an amazing story, Mississippi women actually, who have an amazing story to share. Since it's Black History Month, I wanted to come and just kind of talk to you and just get your story about growing up in Mississippi and just during the Civil Rights Movement time and all of that. So I do first want to ask the question, tell us where you were born and raised here in this great state.
I was born in Pocahontas, Mississippi, and Pocahontas, Mississippi is like 9 miles outside of Jackson, Mississippi, 9 miles north, Highway 49 north. Awesome. And that's Pocahontas, just a little village community. Mm-hmm. And it really was a farming community at the time when I was born. I was born in the year of 1940, so that was back after the war, and right, people were farmers at home, and that's what they did for life, farming. And so my granddaddy, who was Mr. Lemon Munchin, Lemon, like L-E-M-O-N, Munchin, and that was my granddaddy. That's my mom's mother, and my great grandmother was Sarah Munchin, and she was just a wonderful lady. A very stately, tall woman. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and very proud of her. And my daddy was Frank Adams, and my grandmother, my dad, that was Isabella Adams, and my grandmother lived to be 108. Wow. I love to tell that story because she was 108. Oh, she was a woman of wisdom. It was so interesting to have her around. So growing up, little girl in Pocahontas, Mississippi, on the farm, Mom and Daddy separated when I was 5 years old. That I can remember as though it happened yesterday, because we were going to Granddaddy's house. Never forget that. Rode a wagon. Didn't have trucks and things back then. We were in the wagon going home, going to Granddaddy's. And that's where we were going to stay with Granddaddy and Mom and Grandma Sarah, because that was going to be home for a while. Oh, wow. And so there we were. It was 4 girls. It was amazing. There were 4 girls of us. And the youngest at that particular time, she was the baby, really. She wasn't even a year old. And so it's amazing how I can remember things at that time. So we grew up. Then mother married again. So we're still on the farm, growing cotton, growing corn, vegetables, and all of that. Yes. And I remember as a young girl, having to follow Mom to the field because she said she did that to keep me out of trouble, because I was a busy one at the house. So I would find plenty of things to do. So she said, well, instead of keeping me at home getting in trouble, she'd take me onto the field with her. And so I was there in the field. We walked to school, and I tell them that we didn't have school buses or anything. We had to walk to school. And we went to school, whether it was rain or shine, we went to school. Wow. And we had the one-room schools, and our school was really like church-related schools. Right. As I grew older and saw that, because it was like most our schools was closely connected to a church. And that brought meaning to me when I had a chance to travel to Liberia. And I got over in Liberia in 2011, and I saw that the schools there, it reminded me so much of when I was growing up. Because churches was here, and there was a school. Awesome. And they were small schools like we had. I said, oh, this is such a reminder I felt right at home because I had that experience growing up. Wow. And so, yes, I did pick the cotton. I told them I picked cotton. I milked the cows. Yes. I fed the hogs. I did all of that because we didn't have no big brother. So I was like the little tomboy, and he was okay. And so when I teach my students and I share my story, and they look at me like, I said, "Oh yeah," I said, "You thought I was always cityfied, didn't you?" I said, "I just was a little country girl from the country, picked the cotton, slopped the hogs, milked the cows, did all of the above." And it was really part who I am today. So you draw on your experiences,
Yes,
and you're never ashamed to share who you were, because it helps you to become whoever you are. And so I was the smart one. I always wanted to learn stuff. I always were inquisitive. I remember I had that inquiring mind.
yes.
I would seek out. With Santa Claus, and I was like, there can't be no Santa Claus, because like I've seen these apples and I've seen this stuff. So, and I was just standing inquiring. So I would get real quiet and never forget. I got real quiet. Santa Claus coming. I just peeked and I peeked and I peeked. And I saw Mama putting out the stuff.
Oh, no.
I said, that's Santa Claus. And I peeped.
We got to keep the little babies from seeing this.
And I did. And I discovered that, I know who Santa Claus is now, but I couldn't tell her, you understand?
Right.
I had to pretend that I still believed that was Santa Claus. And so, but that was fun growing up. And then when I got a chance to really tell Mama, when I really realized that there was no Santa Claus, and I took all the fun out of it, you understand? Because, you really thought that Santa was coming and he's going to bring this sack of toys and he's going to put them around. And I saw that Mama was Santa. Discovered the toys up in the attic. Yeah, and that took all the fun out of it because but that was part of growing up.
Yes.
And so I completed high school. I went to completed high school. That was the first experience of riding the bus. I had a chance to
in
ride
high school.
Yeah, because we walked the rest of the time. So from high school, I went to high school, and it was at Sumner Hill High School in Clinton, Mississippi, and we had to ride the bus from Pocahontas to our school.
Wow.
It's quite a ways, but that's what we did daily.
Right.
And we would really literally pick cotton all day on Saturday so that we wouldn't have to miss school.
Catch up.
Oh yeah, we would because we went to school. So on Saturday we picked cotton because we weren't going to miss school. So that's what we did.
Awesome.
So when I graduated in 1959 from high school, and first to graduate from high school.
Awesome.
Yes. And then after graduating from high school, I went to college, Jackson State College, university at that time.
I love. Yes.
Yeah. And I went to school and I completed my first year of college. And after that, I got married. Yeah. And so then we started raising a family. And so it was like 11 years before I returned to school. But I was determined that I would go back to school. I didn't know how I was going to go back to school, but there was one thing that I wanted to do was to complete college. Well, I went to work for, it was called South Central Bell at that particular time.
Yes,
I went to school. I went to work for them in 1969. It was in April of 1969. I started working for South Central Bell. And while I was sitting there waiting for my interview, I started reading the brochure, and I saw that company had a tuition plan for their employees. And I was to go to school. I was like, wow, this is my opportunity. So I worked 2 years before I decided to go back to school. And I went to school. I returned to school in 1971.
Awesome.
As a freshman, as a sophomore, because I had completed my first year of college. And I was in school. I'm the oldest student in school with all of these young minds. And but it was adjustment that I had to make because I had to adapt to studying and preparation and had 4 children.
And it was a lot.
And a full-time job and a husband. Yeah, it was like my work was cut out for me. But I was determined. And so I would see that the children got their homework. And then once I had put everybody to sleep, then it was my turn to stay up and do my homework. Then I had to go to work. So I was able to do maneuver into all of that and yet continue to go to school, full-time job, full-time mom, husband, all this stuff. But I kind of kept it balanced. So I completed my first degree in 1977.
Awesome.
Oh,
We
that
don't.
was an
Yes,
exciting
ma'am.
time for everybody.
Yes,
And my
ma'am.
youngest child, oh, he was so excited. He told everybody at his school, Mama graduate, Mama graduate. Everybody knew that I was graduating because he told everybody. They said he was just like singing something, Mama gonna graduate, Mama graduate.
Because
And
that was
so
something to be
it was
proud
so
of.
excited. And because he would follow me to school, literally. He knew the campus at Jackson State. He would walk all over the campus and come and jump up at the door while I'm in the classroom. And I'd have to go out and you can do that. But
Right.
he knew the school. He loved
Awesome.
following his mama. And so my kids and I went to school for my first degree,
Mhm.
my master's degree. We were all in school together.
Yes,
And so
ma'am.
that's what they were used to, their mom going to school. So we went to school together.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
So, Ms. Green, we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
And then we'll come right back. So, y'all, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
Whether buying or selling a home, service counts. Lynette Sutler with One Star Realty is your trusted realty agent with over 10 years of experience and ready to serve you, giving you the star treatment. Call Lynette Sutler today to get the service you deserve.
During a public health crisis, it can be hard for those facing domestic abuse to know what to do. Being confined in the same space as an abuser can increase threats to safety, and leaving an abusive relationship during a crisis can be even more difficult than normal. You can help. Ask them how they want to connect and be creative. Be supportive and believe them. Help them think through how to stay safe. Following these tips, you can help victims of domestic violence stay safe during COVID-19.
Okay, you guys, we're back and we're still here with the lovely Miss Lucille Green, and she's just given us her story and this wonderful history of her life. So come on back and join us. So, Miss Lucille, talk to us about your time during the civil rights movement. Tell me about your involvement during that time.
Well, that's a good subject because you have to understand that I was able to, that was during the 60s, and my children, I had my young children. And so my children really literally went to, they integrated school.
Right.
We didn't go to, we went 1 year to segregated school. And after that, my children integrated Forest Hill High School.
Right.
That was the
Awesome.
integration. My daughter, and she was the first year in the school where she first went to West Side Elementary School. That was her first year, but that next year, no more segregated school, we were
Right.
integrated school. And so my children were part of the integration of schools. And during the 60s, that's when we were really busy with the civil rights movement. So much happened during that time. There were the sit-ins, we experienced that.
Yeah.
Woolworth downtown, the sit-ins, we remember the civil rights workers coming to work and getting
Yeah.
people to register to vote, which was not easy.
Yeah.
People were afraid to really go. I really actually had to, I remember when I went to get registered to vote, and during that particular time, you had to pay what they call poll tax.
Poll tax.
Well,
yes,
when I
ma'am.
and then you didn't register to vote until you was 21. So
Oh,
on the
wow.
day that I turned 21, I never forget, I was at my grandfather's house, and I went from there downtown to register to vote. My $2 poll tax fee. And during that time, you had to recite a portion of the Constitution. Well, I guess God just was working with me. I went down to that courthouse with my Bible under my arm, and I was just ready to answer any question that they were going to ask me. And they didn't do anything but give me that little. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I didn't have to answer
you just
nothing. I
prepared.
didn't have to recite anything. And they just gave me this little paper for me to fill out. It took my little $2 poll tax and gave me the receipt. And I'm like, I didn't have to say nothing. I said, Granddad, they didn't ask me nothing. I just got registered to vote and at the age of 21. And it was so, and yeah, but I tell people now, you just be ashamed of yourself if you hadn't registered to vote. I said,
Yeah,
if you're not
because it's
registered
so
voter,
easy.
please don't tell me. Because
Right.
because I know what it was like. And I
Yes.
think that, but during that particular time, we were like a group of people together, fighting together
Yes.
for a cause.
For a cause.
Yeah, we were fighting for a cause. We
Right.
believed that we all were I always remember that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that
Yes.
all men are created
Yes.
equal. And so that's what we were fighting for. What is the problem? The only difference is the color of our skin. We had nothing to do with that.
Right.
And so we didn't understand what's wrong with it, that we can't all be equal and work together for the common good. But it took us a long ways. It
Yes,
was a long
ma'am.
way. The 60s up until now,
Mhm.
that's a long ways. We come a long ways from there
Right.
because people were afraid. I mean, people were literally afraid to register to vote
Yes, I
because they were
remember.
afraid that they were going to lose their job.
Yes.
If somebody found out, they'd be able to register to vote. So they didn't.
Mhm.
And it was fear.
Right.
And people would actually fire them. It was back then. If you bought a new automobile, oh, you didn't drive that car nowhere.
Not to work.
Not to work. Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
And you didn't even tell them when you had one
Wow.
because they would fire you.
Really?
Yeah. They would literally fire you because it's like, you ain't supposed to make that kind of money. You ain't supposed to be driving that kind of car. And
Mhm.
you're not even supposed to be wearing those kind of clothes.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, we were discriminated against not only in how you look, how you dress. I mean, that was it.
Miss Lucille, I love during this time, and this is not the only time that I talk to older women, but I love sitting down and talking with older women because it's like there's a poise, there's a regal, something about you that it's like, I'm going to pronounce my words and I'm going to speak proper English. And it's just something about just sitting and being in the presence of someone who's older and grew up during that time that knew not how to act, but just how to present yourself proper and not even proper. I hate to say proper, but just how to present yourself in.
But
Do you know what I'm saying?
we were taught that. We were
Yes.
mentored. As I said, my grandmother, who was my mama's grandma, my great grandmother, Sarah Mutchin, was such a stately woman.
Yes.
And she could recite those poems and we just would sit at her feet.
Yes.
Because she could, and her diction was just great. You understand?
Awesome.
And so we learned to speak. You say what you have to say.
Yes.
You don't mutter, you say it.
That's
and we
right.
were taught that.
Right.
Speak up, say what you have to say. And yes and no. And when we would go to town, and our mom would be holding my hand so tight because I would say yes and no. And she would just be squeezing my hand. I said, well, Mom, that's what I learned in my book. It's yes and it's no.
Right.
And I did that. And she would tell me that that child was so brave. She scared me to death. But I was like, brave.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes and no. That's in my book, Mom.
Right.
It was no yassa and nossa. I didn't know that. What was that you're saying? And so those that came out, it grew up in me. And that's how I taught my children.
Right.
You gotta speak. You gotta learn to speak. Say what you got to say.
Right.
Open your mouth. Say
That's
it.
right.
And that's what you do.
Right.
Speak. Be brave.
Yes.
Be courageous.
Right.
Do what you have to do. Feel good about you.
Yes.
And that's what we were taught. The people would watch us get off of the bus because they would talk about how well Mother had us dressed.
Yes.
And I tell them that even if it was just a fur-lined sack that she could make a skirt out of,
Wow.
it was well kept.
Wow.
And we were clean.
Yes.
We would wash our socks. We would hang them by the fire to dry at night. Because we didn't put on dirty clothes to
No,
go to school.
ma'am.
So we were taught that.
Yes,
And they
ma'am.
would say cleanliness was next to godliness. And so we were taught that. That just came up inside of us. It's still inside of me today.
Yes,
And so
ma'am.
when I tell people that I get up every morning and I get fully dressed, and they say, what? I say, yes, I do this for me.
Right.
I dress every day. And so it's a part of who you are. But with the movement, then we had the Masonic Temple, and that was actually really a meeting place, the headquarter meeting place for civil rights workers that came, because we had stars that came, Halle Berry, Fonte, and all Lena Horne.
Wow.
All of these folks came to
Mississippi.
to the Masonic Temple.
Wow.
And they would come for the cause of freedom.
Right.
And they would do the fundraisers, and they would lead that money to help with the fight.
Awesome.
But they would come.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what they did.
That's amazing. We're going to take a short break and we're
Okay.
going to come back. And I want to come back to that. So, y'all, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
During a public health crisis, it can be hard for those facing domestic abuse to know what to do. Being confined in the same space as an abuser can increase threats to safety, and leaving an abusive relationship during a crisis can be even more difficult than normal. You can help. Ask them how they want to connect and be creative. Be supportive and believe them. Help them think through how to stay safe. Following these tips, you can help victims of domestic violence stay safe during COVID-19.
Whether buying or selling a home, service counts. Lynette Sutler with One Star Realty is your trusted realty agent with over 10 years of experience and ready to serve you, giving you the star treatment. Call Lynette Sutler today to get the service you deserve.
Okay, you guys, we're back. And when we left off, Miss Lucille, you were talking to us about Harry Belafonte and Lena Horne coming to the Masonic Temple, coming here to Jackson to help raise funds. Talk to me about that. That's awesome to me.
Well, see, during that time, we had to get the superstars to come in and help raise
Yes.
money, because it's like that's where they got the help from. And the people would come, and I'm so proud that I can say I had a chance to meet Lena Horne and Halle Berry Fonte, and I actually had a chance to meet Leontine Price, and that was one of the greatest things that I could have done.
Yes.
I mean, I saw those people, and it was like, you never dream of this, but I had a chance to see these individuals, and it was just great to be a part of the movement. And at that time, we were really not afraid, because I tell them, I can remember when Mega, at his funeral, I can remember that until today.
Right.
I could go to the Masonic Temple and literally sit in the spot where I was sitting on that particular day.
Right.
It was busy, it was full, but I got me an edge of a seat on the corner, and I sat there during that whole service. But I remember that day because at the end of the service, we literally marched from the Masonic Temple downtown Jackson.
Wow.
Martin was here with us.
Wow.
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, and he was leading the march. And as we got downtown Jackson on Farish Street, there were folk on top of the building, and bottles started coming into the crowd. And they were saying, take cover, take cover. But thank God, didn't anyone get hurt?
Wow.
Not a one. But we all, there's a crowd had to disperse. But we were peacefully marching downtown after the funeral of Mega. And that was what we encountered.
Wow.
But we still kept the movement going. They didn't stop it.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
even though Mega might have been dead, but that dream, what he worked for so hard, it kept going, forging ahead. And even after, I remember the March on Washington. I remember that one because my father-in-law took part in that March on Washington.
Awesome.
I remember all of these things. I remember Martin and that profound speech. I have a dream.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh God, every time I hear that, it's just like he's still present. But I remember that. I remember that big scene, all of the crowd of people that had gathered
Right.
And then when Martin got killed, now that I do remember.
Yes.
It was like a hollow place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was like, it was real sad. It was like a dark day.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a real dark day
Yes.
for us. But all of these things we experienced, but from that, with wrongs, I mean, you can kill the dreamer, but you can't kill the dream.
Not at all.
So the dream is still alive
yes,
in
ma'am.
many boys and girls,
Yes.
and many of the older seniors that are still here.
Definitely.
It's still very much alive.
Mhm.
And the peacefulness about Martin is what I think we remember
Yes.
mostly,
Yes.
because he was not he didn't believe in nonviolent.
Yeah.
So I remember that most, because you can accomplish a lot without being violent.
Definitely.
Silence says a whole lot.
Yes, it does.
Many times you don't even have to speak,
Right.
and you can get more accomplished that way. It has really, I guess, growing through the years have taught me so much, because being married, I was married for 27 years, and after 27 years, I became a divorcee. But it didn't really make a big difference to me,
Mhm.
because I see you can be whatever you want to be.
Yes.
And that's the reason why I keep striving and teaching young women that, God made us a perfect gift. We are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes, ma'am.
And so
Yes,
for
ma'am.
that cause, we're here. We are made in his likeness and in his image. So I said, we're queens, and we gotta act like royalty,
Yes,
because that's who he made us. He said that we were a royal priesthood.
Right.
And he said, I bought you with a price. So that's serious to me.
Definitely.
And so it's a motivation for me. And many people ask me, and I remember one of my instructors asked me when I was in school, and it was two of them. They were both white gentlemen. One was my accounting teacher, and the other one had taught me business management. But they were there, and they said, we were just discussing you. And I said, well, what are y'all saying about me? So we just wondering, what gives you the drive? What drives you? And I looked at him. I said, you wouldn't believe. I see, you really wouldn't believe. I said, but just say, I have 4 reasons. I said, that's my 4 children.
That's exactly right.
I said, that's what drives me. I said, because I want them to always know that they can be whatever it is that they want to be.
That's right.
It got nothing to do with your color.
That's right.
You can be it. It's all in the state of your mind.
Yes.
And I believe that until today, that you can become, you can do whatever it is that you want to do.
That's right.
If you just keep your mind focused. That's what it is.
Yes,
Nothing
ma'am.
defines you. Your color don't define you. Where you live don't define you. Your Mississippi don't define you.
No, it doesn't.
It is who you are as a person.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that's what helps define. God made us all alike.
Yes, he did.
And the only difference is the color of our skin.
That's right.
And we had nothing to do with that. Because when he did that, he said, let us make man. And he said he made him in his likeness and in his image. Didn't say nothing about black, white, blue, nothing. But let us make man.
Yes.
And he did that.
Right.
And man became that living soul.
Yes.
And so that calls, like, oh God, I tell him, I said, we can't discriminate.
Right.
We gotta love one another.
That's
what
right.
he said. And he wants us to do that.
Amen.
Regardless to creed or color. Love one another. That's what we gotta teach our children.
To love.
We got to
one
teach
another.
our children to love, because if you love yourself first,
That's right.
you gotta first love yourself. And then when you know how to love self, you're gonna take care of self. And then you gotta love God. And you got and so if I say I know him and I love him, I'm gonna love you.
That's right.
Because he said you can't love me who you never saw. And I'm looking at you every day and I don't love you. Something wrong with that.
Absolutely.
So that love is the key.
That's right.
And it's the thing that's gonna hold us together. It's the thing that brings us through those barriers.
Right.
It is that keeps us. It's it.
That's it. And we're going to end on love conquers all.
Yeah.
Love. Miss Lucille, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. Quickly, will you tell people where they can find your book, A Life That Matters?
I like to count.
A Life That Counts.
A Life That Counts by Lucille Green is at Amazon.com.
Amazon.com.
Yes.
Y'all support Miss Green. Get this book, read this book, share this book. And I want to thank y'all so much for joining us for another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne. And I will see y'all next time. Bye-bye. If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to sponsor an episode, please reach out to us. You can email us at joanne@womantowomanwithjoanne.com.